All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Game is the Game podcast. I'm here as always with Eric. We're going to go ahead and break down the Eastern Conference games. We're going to go ahead and break down last night's games before we get into that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you like what you see, leave us a comment. We respond to all of them. Was there any game in particular that stood out to you last night?
Uh, we could start with the Laker game.
I mean, with the Laker game, it is what it is. We said before, without Chris Paul, it's going to be hard for them to make this series competitive. I think if you're a Suns fan, I take it from the Suns fan perspective, you have to be really encouraged what you see by DeAndre Ayton. We'll break down their season going forward, but it really hurts that they didn't make us the draft pick of Tyrese Halliburton, because I think if they would have had a Tyrese Halliburton caliber player behind Chris Paul, that would have been a great segue in the future. And then it also provided some assurance now, but positives now, DeAndre Ayton, the way he's played, the way that he's battled Anthony Davis, the talks that I've seen of him, the interviews that he actually wants to be great. He wants to be a better player. And we've seen, just snippets of the player that he can be. So I think you have to be encouraged that if you're the Suns. For the Lakers, you have to be encouraged that it looks like every game LeBron is getting better. The way that they played, especially towards the end of the game when they were clowning around, the bench was clowning around, it shows camaraderie and there's still that good vibe around the team. But yeah, Anthony Davis and LeBron look better and better by the game. And if you're a Lakers fan, it looks like the bracket is breaking down pretty well, whether it's Portland or it looks like it's going to be the Nuggets that they play. You would give them the advantage of that. And then on the other side of the bracket, it looks like a mess as well. So if you're a Laker fan, you're encouraged. What do you think?
I kind of have the same sentiments, but also, if you're a Laker fan, you also have to be encouraged by the play of Andre Drummond the last two games.
He's looked a lot better.
He's looked a lot better the last two games.
Because I thought he shouldn't play. I was getting to the point where he shouldn't play.
Yeah, but on the offensive end, he's had some nice post touches. He's been able to finish around the rim. Defensively, he's been good. He's been able to contest at the rim, and he's also provided some good defensive possessions against DeAndre Ayton. So if you're a Laker fan, you like what you see. You see that Vogel's able to adjust in the last two games. I believe Montrezl Harrell and THT have played a combined 6 minutes in the last two games. So obviously that was an adjustment that he made in the rotation. So you have to be confident, and you have to feel good as a Laker fan, because you have a roster that's capable of mixing and matching and playing different kind of ways. So with having the ability to move Anthony Davis to the 5 and bringing Marcus Morris or Kuzma and having them play the 4, or having LeBron play the 4, or Wes Matthews, or whatever the assortment is, you have the ability to play multiple ways. So you have to be very encouraged if you're a Laker fan right now.
What other games? You, before we ended the episode last night, you kept banging on the fact that Denver has outplayed Portland 7 of the 8 quarters. And I thought, and once again, our preview episode is not going to come up because I fumbled the ball, but I thought that was going to be an easy series for Portland. And it's obviously not been the case. I thought that Nurkic would step up for the challenge, and not that he would equal Joker, but I thought that, he would battle him and contain him. That hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that game?
Like I said, watching game 1 and game 2, if you watch the game closely, it just looks like Denver has outplayed them in almost every facet of the game.
Keep going.
We have a guest in the building. We have a guest in the building.
Keep going.
You notice that they were able to outplay them in almost every facet of the game, and if not for Damian Lillard and Carmelo Anthony's heroics in game 1 in the fourth quarter, this series could easily be 3-0. Again, it's no hate towards Portland. I know a lot of people think I hate on Portland, but like I said, if you watch the games closely, Denver has outplayed them. Jokic has been special. Of course, he's obviously going to be the MVP of the league. Aaron Gordon has played well defensively. They've been able to make shots. Portland has been able to take advantage of Denver's backcourt, obviously with all the injuries that they have with Jamal Murray and Will Barton, but it hasn't made that much of a difference in the series. So yeah, I like I said, Denver has outplayed them now, going on 11 of 12 quarters in the series. They've just outplayed them. It's evident.
Yeah, you're right. They have outplayed them, and they shot it really well from the 3-point line last night. And Dame had a great game, as he usually does. He didn't shoot it that well from three, but we mentioned it on this last spot. It's getting to the point now of his decision times in Portland. And Dame Lillard's 31. They made it to the conference finals, but I think they've been swept. I don't think they've won a game in the conference finals. So it's getting to the point now where Portland has to decide what they want. Do they like this family atmosphere that they built up, or do they actually want to win? And if they actually want to win, they have to make some changes. And that's not blaming Dame or CJ or Nurk, but this current combination of players isn't good enough to get over the hump. If you can't beat this Denver team with both of their starting guards out, what are you doing? Your team is 100% healthy. If you can't beat this team with both of their starting guards out, it's time to start asking yourself some serious questions. What do you want for the league? What do you want for your franchise, for the ownership? I know there's been a transition in ownership since the passing of Paul Allen. I think his sister owns it. She's not involved in the day-to-day operations as he was. People are blaming Terry Stotts, which I think is crazy. I think this is more, if anything, if you have to place the blame, which, that's our industry, that's what you do. I would say it's more Neil O'Shea. I think this roster is just deeply flawed. They cannot defend anyone. But Dame, he's the one that's pretty much steering the ship. He has to decide what he wants to do. And maybe it's just like, hey, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm going to try to figure it out here. But once again, he's 31. And we're getting to the point now where if you can't beat this team once again, then what is being 100% of? What do you think is going to happen in the future? So, shout out to Denver. They're playing a lot better than I thought they would.
Yeah, with the Blazers, it's interesting because over the last couple of years they've just kind of interchanged parts with trying to bring in different pieces to get over the hump and try to do different things. But it's clear that this assortment of players is not going to get them to ultimately to the finals. So they have to make a big change. I think that ultimately, that change is going to be whether they can get a massive free agent. We'll talk about that later, but maybe a player like Kawhi Leonard. I know that he's going to be a free agent this offseason.
To who? To where?
To Portland.
He's going there.
But you never know. You never know how this NBA works. So
he's not going there, man. Let's stop lying.
You never know.
They've did themselves in.
Yeah,
bad contract after bad contract. Mm-hmm. Robert Covington, once again, a guy that in league circles, a guy that the players that actually watch the game, fans that actually watch the game, analysts that actually watch the game know he was not a good defensive player like that. Yeah. So they spent more than what Denver spent for Aaron Gordon on Covington. Bad move. You have the situation where, they hitched their wagon to this Anthony Simons kid. I heard so much about him. Like, this guy's going to be the next one. And then I actually saw him. I said, one, he's another undersized guard. For him to really shine in this league, you're going to have to give him the ball and touches where he's not going to get it on this team because you have these two dominant guards in Dame and CJ. It's just a roster that doesn't make sense. It's just a mess. Well, if you're Kawhi Leonard, why would you go there? The roster's a mess.
Yeah, ultimately, I would think that he would go there because what you can sell him on the fact is we have Damian Lillard and we have CJ McCollum, and they've been able to do a lot. And now if you come and you're here, you put us over the hump.
So it would have to be a sign and trade, a situation like that. We could probably deep dive on this more if they get put out this round, which it looks like they might. But it would have to be a sign and trade, and I'm guessing for the Clippers to even consider it, they would have to be CJ. It would have to be CJ to make it work out. So we'll see what happens with that. What was the last game? So those two games. What's the last game? My mind is escaping me. I don't know what's going on. It's the game that I want to talk about the most. The Miami Heat. The Miami Heat Bucks. The reason why I'm forgetting the game is because I turned the game off by halftime.
Exactly. It was nothing. There was not a lot to remember.
There's not a lot to remember. That I'd like to think. This is a disaster. This is an utter disaster.
It's just funny because, like I said, going back to 2 episodes now, I said this will be the series of who didn't trade for James Harden. I just think if you look at Miami's roster, and I'm not gonna sit here and act like I didn't pick Miami, because I picked Miami to win the series ultimately because I thought Jimmy and Bam would be arguably the 2 best players in the series, up there with Giannis, but they would be 2 of the 3 best players in the series, and obviously they haven't been that. But if you look at Miami's roster outside of them, they haven't got anything from Tyler Hero, and you wonder, some of those things that people have said. Well, a lot of his success last year was attributed to him playing in the bubble. He had the bubble dust. That's what I saw on Twitter. He got sprinkled with some bubble dust, but they haven't got anything from Tyler Hero. They haven't got anything from their supporting cast. And if you really look, one team is just clearly outmatched. Miami's clearly outmatched in the series. And if you're not getting anything from Bam and you're not getting anything from Jimmy, you're going to get blown out every game. Miami didn't really have a chance. It's unfortunate because now I think that they've kind of backed themselves into a wall, because you have to ask yourself what next superstar is going to become available that is going to be on your timeline with Jimmy. And
the thing about that hurts them so much this series is because I listened to the Le Batard show. Shout out to them. The thing that hurts them so much is that now you would hope that their hope before was, we don't want Harden, we want Beal, if Beal becomes available. But now you have to ask yourself, if Beal becomes available, one, does Washington want this package of Hero and Duncan Robinson?
No.
And then 2, if you're Bradley Beal, do you want to go to Miami and play with this?
I don't see how you would want to go there.
This hurts them on a 2-pronged front, because it diminishes free agents and other players coming from them, because you look like you're more than one piece away now.
It's just like fantasy football. You sell high. When you have the opportunity to sell high on a player, you sell high. And I think that their opportunities to sell high on Tyler Hero, for Houston to even consider a package centered around Tyler Hero for James Harden, I think was stealing on Miami's part. So it just didn't make any sense to me how Miami could say, yeah, we're waiting on Bradley Beal, when you're not even sure that he's going to become available, when you know James Harden is available right now. And I think that if you put James Harden on Miami with Jimmy Butler and Bam, Miami's probably up 3-0 right now. So
they're a title contender. I think
you're
everybody.
You're a immediate title contender, and it's just a shame, because I think that a lot of this is based on the media stigma that Harden gets. This is all based on, I think it's all based on that he's this ball stopper who parties, who goes to the club and doesn't take his conditioning seriously, all of these things. And I think that people just forget James Harden's a top 5 player in the league when he steps on the court. I don't care.
He's top 5 and he's not 5.
I don't care if he was at the club till 4 a.m. I don't care how he weighed 270 pounds. When he gets on the court, he's going to drop a triple-double, and he's going to be a top 5 player.
He's top 5. He's not 5.
You can't even debate that. He's a top 5 player when he steps on the court.
The point that you make about NBA media and them really vilifying players and exalting players, is a really important point, because I believe that in the NBA, more than any other league, more than football, I don't follow baseball too much. They put guys in these buckets where this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy, and for some reason, the NBA media has labeled him and Russell Westbrook as these noxious, toxic assets that, even though they do the things that the NBA media says that they care about, they say they care about players playing hard, which Russell Westbrook, you never have to question him playing hard. They say they care about players being durable. Who plays 82 games? Who plays all the time? James Harden be getting hurt this season. One of the first times he's had an injury I can remember, and he's always available to play. So the things that they say that they care about, they obviously don't when it comes to these two players. Just as an example, I think you could push that out to LeBron and other players as well. And I think NBA media gets to this point where they start putting people in buckets as this guy is a good guy, this guy's a bad guy. I think all the guys in the NBA, for the most part, this is one of the few times in the league where you can say the majority of stars are just good guys that work on their games and give back to the community and do good things. So I don't get this who's a villain, who's a hero type shit that they try to do with James Harden. But just going forward for Miami in this series, this news came out today. I don't know if you saw Dante DiVincenzo. He tore a tendon in his foot, so he's out for the rest of the series.
I don't think that matters. I don't think that really
not
matters.
For this series.
In as it pertains to Miami series going forward, I think that is going to matter for Milwaukee as it pertains to Brooklyn, because both teams are advancing. Both teams are advancing. So I don't think it really has an effect on this series. But just going forward for Miami, like I said, I don't know if you're in the front office, where do you go from here? What is the step that you take to make this team better? Are you banking on the fact that, okay, well, next year we're going to come back and we're going to have Oladipo and we're going to try to surround our roster
ready at the start of the season?
Are we gonna surround our roster with better players? Can you even trust the fact that Oladipo is going to be healthy? Can you even trust that he's going to be the same player when he comes back, even if he is healthy? So to me, there's just a bunch of question marks. I think that if you got James Harden, I don't mean to stay on this point for so long, but even if you got James Harden, you got Jimmy Butler, and you got Bam, and let's say you didn't win the finals, I think that you didn't win. Ultimately, you didn't win in the finals, or you didn't make it to the finals, or you lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, whatever the case may be. I think that you would have a clearer path as an organization, as a team, of what you're going to do moving forward. I would think the path would be, okay, well, this was an in-season trade. Let's give them another year. Let's surround them with better pieces. Let's put more shooting around them. Let's do X, Y, and Z. Compared to as now, what is the path going forward?
I guess for Miami, I guess their hope would be, you still have Bam as a young player. You have Tyler Hero as a young player. They would take this bitter pill that they're swallowing and use it as fuel to make themselves better players in the offseason. Especially with Bam, you see the potential for a player with his athleticism. There's obviously things that he needs to work on. I think the bubble, the way that Crowder shot it, the way that Hero shot it, the way that Duncan Robinson shot it, the way that Dragic shot it even, it opened lanes and paths for him to just play so aggressively downhill. And you're seeing now in this type of series that when a team can really just sit back when he's has the ball and not worry about coming up to, blitz these 3-point shooters who are having career, nights shooting the ball. He doesn't really have anything. So he needs to work on his game. I think he needs to extend his range. Tyler Hero, I mentioned it on the last thing. They think that he could be a player that is as good or even better than Devin Booker. He's going to have to improve it. He's going to have to improve it. Excuse me. I think obviously a big difference is his on the ball play. They tried to play him at point guard at the start of the year. He was averaging way more turnovers than assists to the point that they had to take him out of the starting lineup. This is why he comes off the bench, because it's hard to start him and Duncan Robinson at the same time if you're not going to have a point guard on the court. So he has to get better as a ball handler. I think he needs to get stronger. He still has a very light frame. I was disappointed to see that when I saw him again this offseason. That's one of my key things that I look at, for young players, who's worked on their body, because, the strength is, a large part of this game. So, that's one thing that I pay attention to, who's worked on their body. So I think that's another thing that he has to do. So I think that's their hope, that the young players get better. But
not to spend too much time on them, but on Miami, but I can see, I definitely agree with everything that you said about Bam, because I think that Bam can be a superstar in the league, but I don't think that Tyler Hero is that kind of player. I think that we want him to be that kind of player, but I I think that he's grossly overrated. I'm going to just be very honest here. I think he's grossly
I think
overrated.
so too, but
I think he's grossly overrated, and I don't think he's ever going to be that kind of player.
Yeah, I remember.
He's never going to be. I don't think he's ever going to be a player where you can say he's the second or third best player on our team, and we're a contender. He's never going to be that kind of player. I think that Tyler Hero can be a nice piece. A nice addition, a nice role player, but I don't think he's ever going to be the third or fourth best player on your team. And you're saying to yourself, okay, we're a contender. I
don't know. The history of the NBA. This is one thing I say, and I think this is one thing that people constantly fail to recognize. Instantly, the history of the NBA is that there is a player right now who you think that you pretty much know the potential, what he's going to be in his career. And he's not only better than that, he's 10 times better than that. Steph Curry he went from not making the All-Star team to getting benched in the fourth quarters to two-time MVP of the league. Same thing for Steve Nash. Even Jimmy Butler, he was the last pick of the first round. I think he averaged like 3 points his first season. He becomes this player who, went toe-to-toe with LeBron for a game in the finals. So, for me to say, hey, he's not going to be this player, I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know how seriously he's going to take the game. I don't know if the Miami streets have gotten to him, where he's out there partying, he has a famous girlfriend, and he's a superstar already. That happens too. Big boy, don't you see I'm recording? Do you have something to say about the game?
What?
But go, let me finish. Okay. All right. So I don't know. 2 guest appearances by my kids. I need to get a lock on this door. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what type of.
And that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But I just think up to this point, what I've seen, and you're completely right, because no one knows what the future entails, and he might turn out to be that kind of player. And obviously, I would be wrong. But just at this point, from what I've seen from him as a player, I just don't think that you can say, hey, especially with the timeline that we're talking about, with them being a contender. I don't know if in the next 2 years, if he can turn himself into that player where you could say, okay, well, Jimmy is kind of at the end of his prime, and we need to do it now. We need to win now. And Bam has reached that level. Tyler Hero has reached that level. I don't know. And if I was a betting man, I would have to say, I don't think that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, you're right. You make a good point. You don't know. And he could very well turn himself into a Devin Booker, Bradley Beal type player. But ultimately, we have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, we have to wait and see. And I think players can get better as playmakers. There's this great article that Tim McMahon wrote about Donovan Mitchell, about him going to the coaching staff and continuously, because it's formulaic. I mean, there's truly exceptional playmakers in the league, the Lukas, the LeBrons, the Trey Youngs that, make passes that you're like, wow, that pass is out of this world. But I do think that you can get to a great or even a good playmaker by just studying. And because, the reads are the same, pick and roll, this guy rotates, make a pass here, make a pass there. So if he wants it, he can get better. He's being slandered right now everywhere. Bam is being slandered right now everywhere. So we'll see what's in their heart, what type of players they are. Are they going to be a better player?
Maybe they'll take it as a chip on their shoulder that everyone wrote them off after a bad series and a bad year due to a lot of injuries and COVID, and maybe they'll take that as motivation and come back harder in next season. But like I said, I just think that the path for them going forward is a little foggy if I was in the front office. But we can move on. But we're both kids from LA. We're both kids that grew up in the 90s. I remember Kobe airballing 3 straight times versus Utah as a young player. So, they could take this and, decide that, hey, I'm going to use this and I'm going to get better. So we'll see. So the only other series in the East that's really competitive, it seems like, especially with Russell Westbrook hurting his ankle versus Philadelphia, is the Knicks versus the Hawks.
So just watching that game the other night, I know the Atlanta went on a drought, but I think that they were clean looks. They were open looks from three-pointer. They just missed a lot of them. I think it hurts when your shot diet is just solely based on threes. And John Collins, I mean, especially in a contract year, I think he only had 2 shots, played 15 minutes, 5 fouls. He's supposed to give them that other, portion of, downhill attack in their shot diet, and they're not really getting anything from him. But I think just in general, I still like Atlanta in this series. I mean,
I like Atlanta too, but you remember I said something about the shots that they take. Sometimes their shot selection can be poor, and ultimately they do need that person that can attack and create for others. Trey Young is a fantastic player, but his shot selection, he's still a young player. So
I like his shot selection. He's actually attacked the plate.
Sometimes I don't like his shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially in this series, it's been really good. I just think that the problem has been they haven't get anybody to couple it with something else. It's either he has that pick and roll game where he dies with Capella, but usually they get something from John Collins. And the game that really turned my opinion on him is they played the Clippers, and they were up big, and the Clippers ended up coming back. But Kawhi just pretty much stuffed him in a locker that game. Mm-hmm. And that was a game that kind of showed me like he's not really the forceful player that they need downhill. So, I think that portends, further down the road, I do think they're going to win the series, and I don't think that they're going to beat the Sixers in the next round. But if they do want to take it up a notch, to find that downhill player who can attack and play complementary basketball next to Trey Young. On the Knicks side, Julius Randle, he struggled. I think he had 13 points in the second half, but he still didn't shoot it well. And I sent out something to the group chat. It reminded me of the Draymond Green quote. There's 82 game players and there's 16 game players. And I think that we're seeing with Julius Randle, even though he's the most improved player in the NBA, that he is more of an 82 game player and a 16 game player. He's someone that plays with a lot of aggression, a lot of energy. I mean, he shot the ball really well in the regular season, especially from 3. But in this series, I think when teams have an opportunity to game plan, he's still very dominant as far as driving with his left hand. And I think that the Atlanta has done a good job defending him. That brings to other things.
Atlanta has definitely did a good job defending him, but I also don't like his shot selection at times either. And I don't know if that's always a product of the defense or if that's just him not, just taking good shots at times. Yes, he was the most improved player this year, but sometimes in this series, he's kind of reminded me of Josh Smith in the way that Josh Smith.
Yeah, left-hand player, yeah.
Yeah, he would kind of just remind me of Josh Smith, where you see like, okay, he has ability, but sometimes the shots and the decision-making that he has, it just, you're kind of, you're mind boggled on what he's doing out there. But credit Atlanta's defense, obviously, again, when we're talking about playoff basketball, teams have a chance to hone in on you and really dissect and break down what you like to do as a player, and they have the opportunity to game plan for you. So compared to an 82-game season where you're playing 3 games in 4 nights, the coaching staff's ability to really hone in and game plan for you when you're the 3rd game in 4 nights, it's not they don't really have as much
especially
time.
A high energy player like Julius.
Yeah, especially a high energy.
Those
player
are the worst. Those are the worst guys to kind of gauge for. 3 games in 4 nights, you don't have the energy, and this guy is running and jumping and putting his shoulder into you. Another thing, you mentioned Josh Smith. That's a great comparison, and I think it's another reason it's a really good comparison is because Julius Randle, he's a guy that plays with a lot of force, but he doesn't post up. He's not really a post player. Mm-hmm. So, if I gave you the description of the way that he plays, you would think that he's a post player, but that's not really his game. No. And it makes it difficult for him to really attack smaller matchups because the way that he generally attacks smaller matchups is that he just bulldozes, almost a LeBron style player. But when you have a situation where because they always play 2 bigs, that's Tom Thibodeau's style. He doesn't really like to go small. He likes to have some version of rim protecting. When you play 2 bigs, there's always another guy at the rim now waiting for him. So, that bulldozing on the smaller players is not really as effective as it is in the regular season as it is now. I think that's something that's hurt him. But that Josh Smith, that's a great comparison. That's
he doesn't really post up. He takes a lot of jumpers. He does attack the rim, but he doesn't really have a post or go-to move that he can really rely on. So a lot of his game, like you said, is based on his energy and his explosiveness. But I think that what he needs to do if he wants to take another step as a player, he has to develop a post game. But overall, the other things that I've seen in this series, the Knicks, they played well in game 2. They shot the ball well in the second half. Obviously, I want to see how that travels because they have been at home the 2 games. They haven't made a playoff series since 2013, so they have the energy of the crowd and the excitement.
Now, the Garden was rocking.
The Garden was rocking. So now I want to see how that travels. I want to see how their defense travels. I want to see how their shooting travels, and see what they really do in Atlanta. I think
it's kind of crazy how big of a player Derrick Rose has been for them because he was a throwaway trade player. I know a lot of people in New York didn't want him to come because they thought that he would hurt Quickly's growth. And, he was their best player, best offensive, most consistent offensive player that they've had the last 2 games. Another player I'm interested to see is RJ Barrett. This is somebody that was drafted high. He's been solid, but he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. I just expect that type of player. You expect borderline all-star play out of it, and we haven't seen it. One thing, he's played only bit minutes, but I think that people have to be encouraged as well. If you're a Knicks fan, as well as Obi Toppin has shot the ball. He shot the ball really well. I thought that, coming out, a lot of people compared him to Mari Stoudemire, and you can just see in his build. That's one thing that I know for me kind of messes me up with college sports to pro is just how the size translates. Like when I see a guy in college and then I see him in the pro, I'm like, damn, that guy is small compared to the way he looked in college. So that always kind of throws me off. And, seeing him in college to seeing him in the pros, like he's obviously a 3. This is deep shots I'm taking here, but the way that he shot the ball and the way that he's actually attacked off the dribble a bit, I think is encouraging to Knicks fans because I think that he can play the 3 going forward. We talked about it, and we'll close on this. We talked about it a little bit, a lot actually yesterday, that, this is the Clippers' last stand. So that game tips off in a couple of hours. Just before we get out of here, what do you think about that game? We reiterate, I think we picked it last one, but what do you think?
Before we talk about the Clippers, I don't think we have really talked about the Washington-Philadelphia series. We haven't really taled about that.
We haven't really talked about that series.
Let's spend a couple of minutes on that.
Okay.
I think that Philadelphia has played extremely well. I didn't like Washington to win the series. Obviously, Philadelphia was going to win the series, but I expected Washington
to be competitive.
To be competitive. I feel like they were very competitive in game 1. Obviously, Russell Westbrook got hurt in game 2. But you go and you talk about what you said earlier about how teams are able to hone in and really game plan for a team. I think that Washington is hurting bad because Russell Westbrook is not able to get to the rim, obviously because of the rim protection provided by Joel Embiid and Dwight Howard. At all times of the game, they obviously have a big end that can defend the rim, and Washington doesn't have a big that can provide spacing. All of their bigs are lumbering bigs that have to stay in the paint. So I think you really see how much it really is hurting Russell Westbrook down. Between Gafford, Alex Len, and Robin Lopez, I love their style of play and what they've done this season. But you see how much it's hurting Russell Westbrook. He can't get to the rim, obviously, because Joel Embiid and Dwight Howard are there waiting for him. He doesn't have a lot of space to operate. And the shooters that they do have, they're not even making shots. Bertans has been completely awful. They can pay me that same amount of money, and I can do exactly what he's doing. Because
it's funny, and I put this in the chat, and it reminds me of Cal Korver. Like he would always get neutralized when you played against the Warriors, and these guys that just shoot Duncan Robinson, he's getting a bit better, and he is, more mobile. He runs off a lot of screens, but these guys that just shoot in the postseason, it's really tough for them. It's
Yeah,
always tough.
and I have to give players like Klay Thompson and JJ Redick a lot of credit because their ability to catch and shoot off balance and shoot on a dime is big. And you see when you start to really watch the games closely, you see how much that matters because it's so difficult for them to get Bertans an open look. He just doesn't have the foot speed. He doesn't have the strength to get around some screens and fight through contact. So you just see it's so difficult for him. And even when he has been open, he hasn't made shots. Ish Smith and Bradley Beal have played well, but outside of that, they just don't have enough shooting on the wing, on the perimeter. Hachimura has played okay.
And this is where the injury of Thomas Bryant, because you talked about having a big that can shoot the ball. When people forecasted them to have a really good season, be a top 4 seed, I thought they were going to be a top 4 seed. I just thought of an offense that you had 4 guys out with Russell Westbrook being able to dive and attack the rim, and Thomas Bryant was a big part of that.
Ultimately, we're not going to spend too much time on Washington. I think that Washington, if you're a fan and you're somebody in the front office, you can be a little bit hopeful. I think that you acquired some breathing room with Bradley Beal by making the playoffs because now you can go and say to him, look, hey, we made the playoffs, we're getting better. And ultimately, you could sell to free agents. Okay, we got Russ here, we got Bradley Beal, we have some pieces, so you might be able to get some free agents and kind of fill out the roster a little bit better. But
he's always said that he wants to return. He's never wavered for that.
So I think that they just need to get some better pieces. But ultimately, Philly's gonna win that series. So we can move on to the Clippers and Dallas series.
Yeah, and the last thing I'm going to talk about the Philly series is, this was not a series that I wanted. I wanted to see Washington versus Brooklyn. I think the matchups would have been a bit better for Washington, especially when you talk about the rim protection at the rim. So, yeah, it's unfortunate for Philly. Tobias Harris has played well. They really don't have any size to match him and to match up to anyone on the perimeter. So for Philly, I just think that this was a cakewalk series. I think the next series, whoever they get, is going to be a cakewalk series, and I mean the bracket couldn't have broke out better for them. Clippers.
But quickly, to say that about Philly, I would like to see Philly get Atlanta just because of Atlanta's high-powered offense and their ability to shoot. I think that will be a better. What is the word to say? A better. Not. I wouldn't necessarily. Yeah, it wouldn't be. It will be a better dress rehearsal for the Nets. I think that they could get more out of playing Atlanta than they could get out of playing New York. I feel like playing New York. Obviously, New York doesn't have the star power like Washington has with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. But I think ultimately playing New York is kind of redundant to playing Washington. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
No, I get you.
It's kind of redundant, so I would hope that they play Atlanta because Atlanta kind of gives them a different look, and ultimately, I think it will be a better dress rehearsal for the Nets or Milwaukee. But shout out to Philly. I've always had, I'm an Eagles fan, but I've always had my beef with the Sixers. But shout out to Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and those guys. They've been awesome defensively. Obviously, it's just it's too much to overcome for Westbrook and Bradley Beal. But shout out to those guys. They play well.
No, they definitely have. I mean, like I said, we touched on the Clippers series. I just wanted to get your final prediction on what you think is going to happen tonight.
The Clippers, your backs are against the wall. No matter how much you want to say, "Oh, I'm not concerned," your back is against the wall. And I think that 2 minutes into the game, if Paul George misses 2 shots, Twitter is gonna break. Social media is going to break. If they go down by any double digit, I can just see it collapsing early. But
I'll play Paul George, bro.
And the thing about it is, I like Paul George. I do.
I do.
I like Paul George a lot. I hate the criticism that he gets and that he receives. I think that, he didn't. If we go back a little bit, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you go back to the Utah series, obviously he didn't play when he was in OKC. He didn't play well. I think the next year against Portland, he obviously wasn't healthy. He had double shoulder surgery in the offseason. A lot of people kind of brushed that under the table, but he obviously wasn't healthy in this series. And last year in the bubble, it is what it is. He didn't play well in the bubble, but I still like him as a player. But I would hope that at this point, him and Paul George will kind of step up to the challenge and say, okay, we're down 2-0, we're on the road, but we're elite players. We're both elite players. And I would hope that they will go and take over the game and have a dominating win in Dallas. I am going to pick the Clippers.
I'm gonna pick the Clippers too. I just don't see if they lose this game, man. If they lose 3 in a row to Dallas, that's good. I just think, hopefully Lou shortens his rotations and he does some of the things that we talked about, playing Morris, having a 5-wing lineup out there with Batum.
But no quick note, Serge Ibaka is out for this game.
Yeah, he needs to be. He's obviously not ready. He's obviously not ready. When they signed him, there was a lot of hoopla signing him. I was just like, he's an older player. I don't know what this, like how he's the quote unquote piece that you're going to be putting on Ibaka. He's the quote unquote piece that you're going to use to stop Jokic, that you're going to use to stop Embiid. Like it doesn't make to beat the teams that they needed to be. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand their focus on him. I haven't understand a lot of the moves that Lawrence Frank and that GM offense has made this offseason. I don't understand it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But we'll go ahead and end it there. Starting next week, we're going to break down every team in the league, spend 10 minutes on every team in the league, and we're going to go ahead and push out this Bucks versus Nets. We're going to go ahead and break that down because it looks like both series are pretty much going to end pretty quick. We didn't talk about Boston playing today. I think they're going to get put out their misery.
Yeah, I have the broom in the background. I'm sorry, Celtics fans. And my brother will tell you I'm the one of the biggest Celtic fans that you'll ever meet. But I'm not going to spend too much time. I told Celtic fans on Instagram and Twitter that our roster was not good, and this was.
It's recorded on here. You can go ahead and look at those.
You can go and see it from the beginning of the season. I told everyone this roster wasn't good. We were not a good team, and this was going to happen. I think that Danny Ainge did a horrendous job of evaluating the roster and putting the team together this year. So, broom time.
Yep. So I couldn't agree more. So, everybody, thank you for watching, tuning in, subscribe. We're definitely going to be pumping out content. Till the next time, the game is the game.
All right.
Always.